Hello Year Sixers and welcome to today's science lesson about dissolving. I know we've done a bit of work on dissolving and melting and freezing, so this is just to clarify some of those things for you. Okay, so our aim is to investigate variables when dissolving some sugar. So by the end of this session you're going to describe dissolving, you're going to be able to explain the difference between melting and dissolving because they are different things. You're going to be able to identify materials that will dissolve in water, and you're going to investigate factors which affect the speed of dissolving. You will need 2 cups or glasses or beakers, just small ones are perfect. You'll need 2 teaspoons, they're the little ones that you stir your cup of tea with, a little bit of water, no more than about 1 inch in your cup, and sugar, no more than 10 teaspoons, so you don't need loads and loads of sugar. I'm also going to recommend that you think about where you put your computer or your iPad or whatever it is you're using to do this, and make sure it doesn't get mixed up anywhere near the sugar and the water. Keep those on separate surfaces. Okay, the disappearing act. These children have put some sugar cubes into a cup of tea. The sugar cubes are just lumps of sugar all packed together. They watch as the sugar cubes seem to disappear. What has happened to them? Talk to your partner about who you agree with. So you're going to have to imagine you're having a conversation with me here instead of a talk partner. We've got the young lady just below the text there. The sugar cubes heated up in the cup of tea, which caused them to melt. They have changed state from a solid to a liquid. So is it the heat that's causing the sugar to melt? Then we've got the young lady standing up with the blue speech bubble, blue-purple colour. The sugar particles have mixed with the water to make it a see-through solution. The sugar cubes have dissolved. So are they mixed together at a particle level? Then we've got the young lady in the middle. The particles of sugar in the sugar cubes heated up so much that they evaporated. They are now in the air. So has the heat caused them to completely disappear? Who do you agree with? Did you agree with this girl here? She is correct. The sugar has dissolved in the tea. Dissolving occurs when the particles of certain solids mix with the particles of certain liquids. When a material dissolves, it looks like it disappears, but it has actually just dissolved in the liquid to make a transparent solution. A solution is formed when the solid dissolves in a liquid. Not all solids will dissolve, and not all liquids will allow solids to dissolve. When you mix sugar with water, the sugar dissolves to make a transparent solution. Although in a cup of tea, the tea's made it a brown colour already, so it doesn't seem like it's a translucent or transparent solution. The sugar particles have mixed with the water to make a see-through solution. The sugar cubes have dissolved. So what's the difference between dissolving and melting? Many people get confused between dissolving and melting, but there are several important differences. And at this point you might want to remember some of our particle drawings that we've been studying in science. Dissolving. Dissolving involves a liquid and another material, often a solid. In dissolving, the solid mixes into the liquid to make a new liquid called a solution. And I remember when we were doing that, we could tell the difference sometimes, couldn't we, when their solution had been formed. Dissolving doesn't need heat to occur, which can be a little bit confusing, because in the previous example with a cup of tea would have been hot, but even if the cup of tea was cold, the sugar still would have disappeared. It has nothing to do with the heat of the cup of tea. Melting. Melting involves only a solid. In melting, the solid changes into a liquid that is the same material. Melting needs heat to occur. So if the sugar had melted, it would simply have been heated. There wouldn't have been any water that had been put into. And you can melt sugar, but it does make a huge sticky mess. I don't recommend it. So investigating dissolving, you're going to choose a variable to find out how it affects dissolving. We already know that sugar is going to dissolve in water. So you're going to, with your 2 cups, teaspoons, sugar and water, design a mini experiment. First step, you're going to choose your variable, and I'll help you do that in just a moment. And you're going to keep everything else exactly the same, so we know exactly what is changing each time. You're going to complete your experiment and make an observation. Again, I'd like you to complete this experiment away from your laptop. So so there's no accidents happening. Then I'd like you to describe what happens when you change the variable, and you can either take a picture of your experiment, record it using your phone or whatever you've got with you, or you can describe it in words and write it onto ClassDojo. And once you've done that, you can upload it onto ClassDojo. So let's go through them. So let's have a look at some of the variables. We're going to click on the speech bubbles to reveal some of the possible variables. How many of these did you think of? Now, variables are the things that are going to change the experiment. Now, first box, the number of stirs. So is it the more that you stir it, the more sugar dissolves, or the faster it dissolves? In your 2 cups, you could have one where you stir 3 times slowly, and then another cup where you'd stir 10 times slowly. So that could be your experiment. See if it looks different in each cup. The mass of material. So the mass of material is how much. So if you put in 1 small spoon into 1 cup compared to 5 large spoons into the other cup, does it make a difference? Will it all dissolve in exactly the same way at the same speed? It's an observation you could make. The type of water. You could find some fizzy water, you could find some tonic water, some soda water, or just plain cold water from a tap, or bottled water if you've got it. So in 1 cup you could have a small amount of tap water, and in another cup you could have a small amount of sparkling water. The type of container. So if you can't find 2 cups exactly the same, you could have 1 glass and 1 ceramic cup and see if it makes any difference. In that case, you'd still need the same amount of water and the same number of spoonfuls, and you'd still need to stir in exactly the same way. The water temperature. So you might choose in 1 cup to put some warm water and 1 cup to put some cool water. You'd still have to measure that water out, make sure that you've got exactly the same amount of water, the same amount of sugar going in, the same number of stirs, everything else exactly the same. That's an experiment you could do to observe. The speed of the stirs. So this time you could be stirring 1 cup quickly 5 times and 1 cup slowly 5 times. Look at the sugar solution afterwards. Does it look exactly the same, or is it slightly different? The time to dissolve. So for this one, you could be putting the sugar into some water, and if you've got a stopwatch, maybe on your phone or your computer, you could record how long it takes for the sugar to dissolve. Still need the same amount of water, same temperature of water, and same amount of sugar in each of them. And if you're stirring them, you need to be stirring them exactly the same to make it a fair experiment. Or the particle size. Now this depends if you've got different types of sugar. If you've got some caster sugar, it'll be made into really small granules compared to if you've got a sugar cube, which comes as quite a large lump. And finally, the time stirred. So you might be counting how many seconds you're going to stir it. So one you might stir for 5 seconds, the other you might stir for 10 seconds. So when you're doing your experiment, you need to figure out which of these you're going to change, and the rest has to stay exactly the same. So the same types of containers, same way you're stirring it, the same water temperature, type of water, same amount of sugar going into each glass. Only one of these can be changed each time. So you need to decide on the question you're going to investigate. So is your question, does the number of stirs affect the dissolving? Does how much sugar I put in affect the dissolving? Does the type of water affect the dissolving? So you need to think about what question it is, and then when you do your experiment, you only want to be changing one of them. The rest of them have to stay exactly the same. Let's just run through this again. By now you should have chosen your variable or one thing and thought about how to keep the other things to exactly the same. Once you're ready, complete your experiment and make an observation. You can pause the video now if you wanted to do that right now. Once you've done that, you need to describe what happens when you change the variable. Then you need to take a picture of your experiment or record it or describe it in words. Once you've done that, you can upload it to ClassDojo. That's the end of today's lesson. If you have any questions, please do ask. I just remind you once more that you only need about 10 spoons of sugar, only a very small amount of water, and keep it away from your electricals. I will be logging on for our next tutorial.